I don't think we've ever seen a market grow that quickly. The vibe coding community thinks we should throw away all of the existing code and start from scratch. We instead want to help software engineers that have invested. So if you're working on a proprietary code base and you install one of those products, they took that as license to then take your entire code base and sell it to model providers. Was putting together a team not to go after vibe coding, right? You could think of us as the anti-vibe. Okay. $1 billion in ARR has been added roughly over the past year. $2.5 trillion lost in the US market last year due to software failures alone. I remain skeptical of the $1 billion single founder company where our AIs are capable of achieving that.
Before we begin, a quick thanks to Stifel Bank. From venture debt to general banking, they provide world-class support to my portfolio companies. Now on to the show.
Welcome to the UNPAK Podcast, the podcast for operators by operators. I'm your co-host Vignesh, and I'm a partner at Sierra Ventures.
And I'm Arvind, partner at Geodesic Capital and your co-host as well. And today we have a fantabulous episode. I think you will enjoy listening to Scott Dietzen, who's the CEO of Augment Code. It's one of the, and I'll let Scott talk in his own words, but a rising ship in the world of software development and AI. But of course, Scott had an illustrious career spanning more than 14 years at Pure Storage, and is a recovering, I would imagine, AI engineer. I mean, your PhD was in those realms. But look, Scott, enough of me telling who you are. Let me turn the tables a bit to you, and why don't you kick us off with a bit of your background and your journey a bit, and then I'm sure we'll dive deeper.
So I did indeed do machine learning early on. I earned a PhD with an emphasis in machine learning quite some time ago. But I've spent my career as an entrepreneur doing really large-scale complex systems software, certainly at Pure Storage and at preceding companies where we built application servers and so on. And I was always struck by how hard it was to craft and evolve these tens of millions of line, hundreds of thousands of file code bases, extremely painful. And so when large language models emerged, I got excited that the combination of human and machine intelligence could make software development of these really large complex systems much more manageable. And so that was the founding of Augment, was putting together a team not to go after vibe coding, right? You could think of us as the anti-vibe. The vibe coding community thinks we should throw away all of the existing code and start from scratch. We instead want to help software engineers that have invested, a huge amount of time in creating these, large sophisticated code bases that run the world. We wanted to be able to make it a lot easier to enhance, to evolve them, to pay down tech debt, deliver all of the capabilities, remove security vulnerabilities, make this software profoundly better and make the task of software engineering more fun and easy. So that was what we set out to do.
Thanks for that, Scott. I think, in a conversation earlier, you kind of mentioned around, I'm just referencing a bit of your own earlier journey with, say, Pure Storage. I think there was this stage whereby you could see that flash storage has got a moment, right? But Pure Storage came around and kind of reduced the cost and compatibility considerations that enterprises may have, and that was the inflection point. And you felt like this is the moment to sort of press on the gas, right? Is there such a revelation from your perspective? AI, generally speaking, but more critically, of course, you are at the helm of this company in what you guys are doing.
Yes. So, if you look at back, say, a year, we were all of the AIs for code were doing things like code completion. We launched a feature called Next Edit, which meant we would, if you made one change, we would look across your code base and try to anticipate your next move. And these were nice little accelerators in the hands of developers. we had one customer, benchmark us versus the incumbent solution at improving their productivity about 40%. So they could produce PRs 40% faster than they could, in this case, on GitHub Copilot. And so we won the business. But things have changed really dramatically over the past year. Last summer we saw the launch of Claude 3.5, which really transformed people's expectation about how much value an AI could add for code. We saw chat explode as people were able to glean a lot more knowledge about large complex code bases quickly. And so we saw chat ramp really dramatically, but then it's just agents that have totally transformed the market. I looked recently, it's not like our chat usage has fallen off. That's what we use our largest language models for, but they're now 97% agents. And so agents are, engineers delegating significant tasks to the AI to go off and undertake. And that's what's really caused this dramatic ramp in productivity, right? We're moving from, 40% improvements to 2 and 3x. And I think there's the opportunity to get well more than that. We have the ability to delegate tasks in parallel now to 10 different agents. So, if you're an engineer, especially if you're one that's used to being a tech lead, the opportunity to delegate work items to say, 10 other more junior engineers and see their work results and evaluate them. Maybe you race an agent and pick one of 2 alternative implementations based on what you like best. Go write tests in parallel, or have somebody do a code review while you're heading home to have dinner with your family, and then you're back online to check it later. Just dramatically increases what an engineer is capable of accomplishing, and hence what teams are capable of accomplishing.
Got it. No, thanks for that, Scott. Maybe it's helpful for the audience if you could sort of take a step back and then let the audience know what Augment Code is and what Augment Code is not, right? I mean, this whole vibe coding thing, ever since Andre Karpathy, I guess he kind of made a post about it, has become a thing. But let's hear from you. Like, how are you envisioning the platform right now, and what do you guys think about the vision for the product?
Yeah, Andre is great, by the way. I mean, he's educated such a broad swath of engineers about what AI is capable of, and this evolving architecture where AI is a bit part of the software mix. I'm a big believer in. So, the vibe coding concept is that, often a non-engineer starts with a statement of a simple problem that they want to solve. I often call these weekend projects. And you can write a natural language description, or even provide a visual interface cue that you'd like the system to go off and implement, and it will crank out a little prototype for you. There are numerous solutions out there like Lovable and Replit that really target and focus on that end of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. Think of Augment as starting from the other end of the spectrum. So you're a professional software engineer. You're looking after a larger, more complicated code base, maybe 100,000 files, as I mentioned earlier in it, and you're trying to evolve that code base to have new capabilities. You're maybe going to change its architecture. You want to refactor it in some way. We are the AI that you can plug into your IDE, whether you're using VS Code or JetBrains. We also support Vim. And then we are in a position to help you undertake those activities. Most of our users now will delegate a lot of work to the AI. So they'll discuss in natural language how they want to evolve the code. The AI will propose some changes, and then they will bless those changes. So we're still, maintaining a very human-centric approach. We don't envision replacing software engineers, but we do want to make them substantially more productive. And we work right inside the IDEs that they're used to. So if you're a VS Code user, if you're an IntelliJ user, we're just a plugin that fits in naturally, and you can preserve everything else you like from that environment, including the surrounding ecosystem, whether that's from Microsoft or JetBrains, all of the security models and so on. And that's a different approach than some of our competitors like Cursor and Windsurf are taking, where they're trying to replace the IDE, the ecosystem, the security model. We want to preserve all that because we think that's a much better fit in the enterprise.
Scott, can you talk a little bit about how you decided to go after the enterprise? What made you think that timing was now? What did you feel was missing from the competitors, like you just mentioned? Like what made the enterprise ripe today?
So we recognized that large language models were on a trajectory to be able to, really help coders. This is, 2.5 years ago when we were founded, that we saw that opportunity. But we knew context was going to be a very difficult problem. When you've got a large code base, there were a couple different proposals early on for how AI was going to become relevant. One was fine-tuning on customer code. So you're going to pass your code base off to an AI model provider, and they're going to train on it. The challenge with that is first, it's expensive. And fine-tuning continuously, like every time you change a line of code, are you going to re-fine-tune the model? Or is the model always going to be working off of stale data? The other big issue customers had was the risk of leaking IP, right? So you have secret sauce inside of your software. If your model provider is going to fine-tune on that, do they somehow retain intellectual property insights from your software that might harm your competitors? And so there was a big concern about fine-tuning. So the next approach and cut that was taken was long context. So why don't we just pass an entire software code base in the prompt to the large language model? Of course, the challenge algorithmically is it is the cost of the square of the length of the context that you pay in using the LLM. So if your idea is to pass tens of millions of lines of code in as context, that's a huge performance penalty that you're going to take on. But even more importantly, humans and large language models can't assimilate that much data meaningfully. So if you read through, a 20 million line code base and then started getting asked questions about it, there would be a very good chance you'd need to refer back to it to understand, how it works and what's going on, because you wouldn't assimilate everything. The same exact thing is true for these large language models. And so what we set out to do was to build a context engine that would take and digest, those 20 million lines of code, for example. We would build a real-time semantic map. So we're constantly updating it. Every time the code changes, we change the map so that the AI is always informed with exactly what's current that the engineer or the team of engineers is working on. And then we select the ideal context in real time for every request that the engineer is doing. And so that combination, we use retrieval augmented generation, RAG, in conjunction with this real-time semantic map, allows us to uniquely support using AI to evolve these really large, complex code bases. That's our raison d'etre, and that's the thing that's allowing us to grow so quickly in this very competitive space.
Do you view it then as kind of just a land grab? And I ask this in the context of, obviously, inference cost is going down over time. And in the enterprise, I'm sure when you go, most shops are probably Azure shops or AWS shops. They have their own strategy when it comes to what sorts of tools they want to provide to their customers. And in this world where you have big players, costs going down, is it just about capturing as much data as possible, or how do you think about where your competitive edge will lie?
So I think these are really hard research problems. I mean, we have a very sophisticated AI team, talent from Google, from Meta, from NVIDIA, and we worked on this problem for 2.5 years to crack it. We think we're the only ones that have managed to solve it. We will see how long it takes the competitors to do so. We've also invested very aggressively in security, in making our solution much more robust for enterprise deployments than the alternatives out there. We can dig into things about our security architecture that make us special. And then I mentioned that we support the IDEs as they are today, rather than requiring you to replace them. That's kind of our 1, 2, 3 punch right now in terms of how we win these enterprise deployments. I think they all have legs. If you look at where our competition is, that we'll be able to continue to win business. And I think the barriers to entry are going up rather than down in this sector. The really good news is we don't, other than Microsoft, who has a strong presence with GitHub Copilot, at least we don't see a lot of Amazon Q. We don't see a lot of Gemini Code Assist out in the market. We do see Cursor. We do see some Windsurf. And then we see, GitHub Copilot, which we're having a lot of success displacing right now. And so when you've got this large a market that is, currently being dominated by startups, it's incredibly exciting.
If it could just go back to the, where you started with, which this is a hard research problem. And I'd love if you could give a couple of examples, Scott, on what exactly is it that's allowed you guys to crack the code. And I'm trying to understand a couple of things. And obviously, I'm not asking you to share secrets here, but the question is coming from a couple of areas. One, in this world of AI, where there's so many companies popping up, and we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording. As a buyer, it becomes very hard to differentiate. And so, is there something technical validation, technical product validation? Because with Pure, you can run these benchmarks. It's almost like tangible what is better and different about a product like Pure Storage. In this world, there's some subjectivity to it. So just trying to understand, what are the technical differentiations that allow a customer to understand what's different? And then B, as you talk about this space becoming a higher barrier to entry category, are there learnings and lessons for founders that they should think about as they go into their spaces? So is it just owning context? Is it about fine-tuning better models? What exactly are the ways that they can win and build their moats?
Yeah. So I would start on that this is a supremely savvy audience, right? We sell to software engineers. They're perennially dissatisfied, with whatever they have in front of them. And so they're always willing and curious to try the latest and greatest technology out. So that has given us this opportunity. We've talked about our context engine, and we've convinced a bunch of engineers to give it a try. And they've been astounded. One customer, Webflow, they were able to de-emphasize their mentoring program because they found Augment was capable of answering the toughest questions about their architecture that only their senior, most seasoned engineers were able to answer. That Augment was able to come in and really up-level the team very quickly in terms of allowing engineers to come up to speed and get productive a lot faster, right? So that was a very easy way for us to add value. Another customer, Data Direct Networks, they do a lot of AI storage work in conjunction with NVIDIA. It's a very seasoned team and code base. They've got decades of runtime on this platform, and obviously it's a huge and complex code base. And Augment was capable of providing AI insights and working in the environments that they used, which included IntelliJ, which included Vim, and be able to bring all of the tooling that they already had in place to bear and solve problems inside this very complex code base that our competitors just couldn't handle. And so, this is where we end up getting these wins when people actually try, these companies that have large databases, security systems, networks, storage solutions. The competitive products are just not able to assimilate and deliver knowledge across those large code bases. And so, I think this is the core advice to entrepreneur would be know your target customer, and work with them. Find target customers that have, the critical use cases that you aspire to get right, and then partner with them to see where your solution works well. With every one of these large customers, we've had issues, of course. You always do. And then you need to be rapidly responsive to understand what's working and what isn't working in order to make it better. But I will say it's certainly nice being in this space because we are software engineers at Augment, so we know our target audience supremely well since we're building a product for ourselves first and foremost to evolve our own product. So we understand the customer, and that customer is very discerning. So, when the AI is capable of, understanding their code base well better than the alternatives, if you're an expert, you want to work with an AI that's an expert. You don't want to work with an AI that's a novice. And even if you're a novice in a code base, like when I crack open code base, it's so helpful to have an AI that's expert because then it allows me to become expert dramatically faster than I otherwise could.
Scott, I think I want to. I mean, this has been weighing on my head, and just because as we look at companies, especially in this AI era, we are kind of constantly asking ourselves, what are the moats that companies are building, right? And I think, there was this early 23, when everyone said, okay, it's a wrap around ChatGPT, right? I think things have evolved, right? There are companies that have taken a more vertical approach, maybe build their smaller models, fine tune over open source, and then data that they have gotten from different sources. So one school of thought could be that maybe it's the data aspect of things that it becomes a moat. The other aspect is the ecosystem that you play in and how relevant you become to your customer, in this case, a software developer, who their system of record is maybe sitting in the IDE, for example, right? And so finding them where they are, and so that their corpus of knowledge is where it is, whereas some of your other competitors may be trying to build a new system, and you have to sort of have a learning cycle there. So maybe is the truth somewhere between, like finding data that sort of you can train on, and you can get supremely well, and of course meeting the customer where they are, so that they don't have to have a new learning muscle memory, or maybe there's something else to it.
Yeah, so I think the moats are growing, right? I think the moats they started low, but if you want to play in this space now, you're going to have to, ultimately build something like a context engine if you want to take on any of these large, sophisticated customers. There is a ton of security work that's necessary to play in this space. We were the first to get the various SOC 2, Level 1, Level 2 certifications. We're the first, and I believe only AI for code that's got the ISO 42001 certification. That's reflective of a ton of work across the product, from penetration testing to ensuring proof of possession that the AI can never be informed for code that an engineer doesn't have access to. So there's no way to leak intellectual property inside of your environment. If you have certain code that is privy to some developers and not to other developers. Things like customer managed keys, where customers control what the AI is able to do, and if there was ever a loss in confidence, they can immediately disable the AI's ability to access and derive any knowledge from their code. So these security hurdles are creating additional moat before people can deliver a solution that's relevant for these enterprise customers. I think the context work that we've already talked about significantly is years of investment in order to close that gap. And clearly we do a ton of work with our own models. We also work with Claude is our large language model of choice currently, but there is a lot of expertise on how we apply and take advantage of Claude in order to make it effective in all of these use cases. And lastly, I would say when enterprises do due diligence and choose a solution, I don't think they're going to be swapping these things in and out, monthly. When they make the investment and you work with their CISO to get blessing for that solution, they're going to probably use that solution for a period of time. You're going to have to stay the best because engineers are always going to be looking to see what else is out there. But I certainly believe it's going to be very hard for new entrants to come into this market going forward, unless they're coming from a really big player. Just because all of the hurdles to get to critical mass have grown so substantially.
One of the other thoughts we have is, how do you sort of build repetitive sort of capability, especially in the context of, you're working with enterprise. I think, by the way, there's something to be said about you folks, what you just highlighted around security and other posture that is enterprise grade. It's a lot of work, and building that muscle memory is not easy. So that's one big area. The other area is just about how do you sort of get your own system performance better when, technically maybe you don't have access to the customer data that cannot transit from one customer to the other customer or across sectors. Curious if you guys have solved for it through some intelligent ways. I think that would be interesting for the audience as well.
Yeah. So learnings across customers are tough, right? Obviously, we want to make our product better, and customers give us feedback while they're using the product. We certainly try to use that feedback in order to improve our product. But one of the things that we are taking full advantage of is learning within customers. So, if you're one particular customer and you offer some insight that makes the product better, we have ways of carrying that over to other users inside of that same customer. So we wouldn't be transferring knowledge between customers because we need to protect that. But if one engineer helps make the product better inside of a particular engineering organization, then those learnings can benefit all the other users of Augment. And so that's a great way for the product to get better as you scale internally. And one other point I'd like to raise, for enterprise customers, trust is really essential. And we've had the model providers that we work with tell us, why aren't you selling us customer data? Because your competition is. Some of the competing products actually defaulted engineers into allowing training on their code. So if you're working on a proprietary code base and you install one of those products, they took that as license to then take your entire code base and sell it to model providers, at least according to what the model providers have told us. That's a practice we've never engaged in and we think is supremely suspect, right? It's almost like somebody rolled a truck up to your business and one person inadvertently opened the door and people came in and took your intellectual property. We think this issue of trust is really sacrosanct for winning enterprise business.
I think the approach and the strategy are really interesting, and I would love to spend a lot more time on it, especially with the way the world is shaping up in enterprise and enterprise AI adoption. I think in the Valley we obviously are seeing so much of the AI stuff that's happening. I don't know how pervasive it is outside of Silicon Valley just yet. I think everybody sees the potential, but I think maybe turning to some tactical advice, Scott, that you've shared in the past. We like to ask a lot about hiring, and obviously you've been super successful as an operator, founder. And maybe let's just start here very broad. You've talked about a framework that you use for hiring people and making sure that you hire better both above you and below you. Like, what's the framework? How do you kind of assess talent? What are you looking for in people?
Well, so I get a lot of help. We obviously try to hire for smarts, for work ethic, and for cultural behavior, like how well do you play on a team. We try to avoid anyone that has political instincts. One of the things that can kill a culture is when people start trying to think about how do they grow the pie for themselves, their slice of the pie, rather than growing the overall pie. So, one of the things we strongly emphasize is trust in the hiring process. Throughout my career, I've never once had to ask for a raise or a promotion or equity, because I always had a management chain that I trusted, or I quit, because I'm not going to work for someone that I don't trust, I don't believe has my best. It's going to give me opportunity as I deserve it, and going to reward me as I deserve it. And we strive to deliver that to everyone, in the organization, right? To build that strong trust. We strive to deliver transparency. When we have a board meeting, we go through the board deck with the entire company and share feedback, bad news as well as good news, because we want to enlist everyone's insights in helping Augment get better. And so I think a key part that comes out of that is, on the epitaph of Augment, after, building the best AI for software engineering, I'd love to say we spawned a collection of entrepreneurs that went on to do great things at other businesses. And so we really pride ourselves on hiring people that have entrepreneurial instincts and desires, as well as great software capabilities, great intelligence, and great work ethic. But that's very much a team practice, in terms of finding the very best of the best, because it makes such a difference. I love to point out that I lower the average IQ every time I walk in to Augment, because it is such a supremely talented team, and the more I can lower that average IQ, the better off the business is going to be.
Are there any tips or tricks that you have that can help founders that are listening to the podcast, operators that are listening to the podcast? Like, what are you doing to keep track of the best talent? Like, where are you finding the best talent? How are you getting them to show up? Like, what's the secret from all your success?
Well, I would say early on we got help from our venture partners. One of them, one of the strongest recruiting practices that I've seen, and they helped us, get our first dozen plus hires on board. There is certainly pulling from your Rolodex. Oftentimes, when you join a company, you'll get a significant number of inbounds, because people that you worked with in the past that perhaps you enjoyed some success together, you had some fun together, and they want to join you again and hopefully repeat some of those successes. But you also need to be very careful about that, because you're building a new culture. You don't want to have try to bring an alternative culture together. It's interesting, and we have Pure Storage alumni here at Augment, but they often went off to places like Snowflake and Databricks in between, right, and honed skills in cloud engineering that have turned out to be extremely relevant to us, and so became a great fit. Now, in terms of sourcing, we maintain a really strong recruiting team. We do rely on outside recruiters. We also source talent ourselves. There is definitely a special knack. We use employee referrals as another great source, and it's a really good testament if you've got a happy team, if they're willing to tell their, the best engineers that they've worked with in their careers that they ought to come look at your company. That's a great additional place to find talent. I think you work really hard. You have to put a lot of energy into convincing the best and brightest to come join you. I think you've also got to be prepared. If you make a hiring mistake, don't let it fester. Not everyone makes an elite team, and that can be tough. But you've got to have a high bar for the people working at the company. That they need to be contributing substantially to the success of that company, or they don't get to stay.
And one last question for you: How much time are you spending personally on recruiting? Is it 20% of your time, 30% of your time?
So I would say my job today is, for executive hiring, I'm obviously very involved in vetting candidates. For engineers, all that vetting has already happened. And so my job is to help explore with the candidate whether Augment is what they're hoping to. And I take a very consultative approach to that, right? My job isn't necessarily strictly to sell. It's to put myself in the candidate's shoes and try to understand what they're looking for in their next, career stop. How do they want to grow? What do they want to accomplish? What are their long-term goals? And I'll often, ask them what else they're looking at. And sometimes, I'll say, look, for what you want to do, maybe this alternative is a better fit for your goals, or what Augment will be better at, and what this other company may be better at. I think if you step into the candidate's shoes and help see the world from their perspective, you can be a lot more effective at deciding whether indeed you're the right fit for them.
And also maybe deciding to convert them or just say bye-bye. But on that note, I guess in the AI lens, in the AI land, do you think that there is any aspect of talent that has been overlooked? Because everyone talks about, hey, how many AI research folks do you have and all that kind of stuff. For example, I feel this concept of forward deployed engineers, which obviously Palantir kind of like made great, is back in vogue, and almost feels like you need somebody to understand the edge cases and codify it into your product. And that traditionally was services that you would have outsourced, but you kind of need to have that in-house now as part of your team. I mean, that's one thing that comes to my mind as to things people, as I speak to more founders, I'm like, okay, they have all of this right now because they know that the enterprises can't get there themselves, so they need to do it themselves. So from your lens, is there any AI landscape kind of talent that is under talked about?
Well, I can say that for Augment to succeed, it's a very interdisciplinary team, right? We definitely have a strong contingent of AI research, but we've got a great crew of cloud savvy programmers, right? I mentioned the Snowflake and Databricks alumni that help us build this very high performant, very robust, secure cloud service. We also need front end user interface talent to help deliver, great developer experience, and that's yet another skill set. You need very engineering savvy designers to help make sure that experience is ideal. You need strong product leaders and strong engineering managers to tie all of these pieces together. AI research is always often grouped together as a single category, but there are a lot of different domains of expertise under that umbrella. Some people are really good at data engineering, to set up and train models. Others are really good at more practical engineering, like how do I tune, or how do I prompt the models to get exactly the kinds of results that I want? How do I build a RAG architecture that will optimally select context? So it's much more, I would say, about the skill set that you need for the task at hand. And I think you have to think carefully about what the right ratios are, right? How many cloud/system engineers do you need per front engineer, per AI researcher to deliver the right solution that you're looking to put in the marketplace? And that probably evolves over time. I think AI is the thing everybody looks at because that's the talent that's most aggressively sought after. But we cross fertilize. Our systems and our front end engineers work very closely with AI research, and so everybody's learning about each other's jobs, and everybody's getting better across the boards.
Scott, shifting gears a bit to a topic that is near to me is go to market, and at Pure Storage you had a long time to sort of scale the company. The question there is, do you see any parallels in the go to market approaches of yesteryears in a different technology time frame and now? I know we just before this party we were talking, everything is moving so fast, right?
Yeah.
Um, are there any lessons from that journey that can be mapped to what you're building at Augment? What stays and what is new?
So the obvious things that stay, any new technology needs to be supremely easy to use to get adopted, right? Technology can get complicated over time, but it's really got to start simple and very easy to use to get mass adoption. And that was, one of our principal lessons at Pure, right? Is most of the competitors' storage systems were, 30 plus years old, and they'd grown really complex to use. And so it was how do you make it really simple, really reliable, very strongly secured, and fast. That is the same, right? Your performance really matters. If you're an engineer, you're waiting, people like to see the AI respond to every keystroke, right? It's like, they want that real-time responsiveness when they're using the AI to do something material that they're trying to make decisions on quickly. So that's the stuff that's the same. I think in the case of Pure Storage, we had an appliance that we had to deliver to somebody's data center, right? So the opportunity to grow and scale that business was fiercely constrained by availability of hardware and software to deploy. With Augment, any engineer anywhere in the world can try the technology today, right? Anyone listening to this podcast can be up and running on Augment, in 5 minutes. And so that gives you a chance to grow the business really quickly. And we're seeing it in this sector, which I think is, the fastest growing in history. Coatue had an analysis where they said $1 billion in ARR has been added roughly over the past year in terms of customer commitments inside this AI for coding space. I mean, I don't think we've ever seen a market grow that quickly, and it's a result of this transformative power that comes to engineers when they're complemented with the right AI.
Scott, you dropped something in there that I want to unpack a little bit. So, look, obviously, you designed Augment as a very enterprise-first company, and there is some notion of a bottoms-up sort of play here that you talked about. Now, those aren't necessarily antithetical, and obviously, you can do both PLG and enterprise. But given that you are trying to capture the crown jewels of a customer and their source code, can you talk about how you find a way to marry those two strategies? Is it like you got to go find the engineers that are working on non-critical stuff and then ultimately graduate them? Or how do you think about getting those two strategies to work together?
So there's one very simple truth, right? If engineers can't try it, they don't believe it's any good. If you're not going to let me as an engineer try your product, then I'm skeptical that you have something interesting. And so just our willingness to let anyone trial Augment and see the difference, right? That's the goal, is that if you want to see what an AI is capable of on a large, complicated code base with security, with performance, with all of the enterprise trappings, anyone is in a position to try it. Now, sometimes, enterprise developers will try it on their side projects, their open source code bases, or things they use outside of work because they may not want to go through the security approvals that they need in order to do it at work. But you let any engineer that wants to give the technology a try, and then what happens is you develop a bunch of fierce advocates, and then those advocates will go to their peers. They'll virally promote the technology so that their coworkers will try it. Or they'll go tell their engineering manager or their CTO or their CISO, hey, this stuff is awesome. We should try it. we have been so inundated. I mean, we only launched self-serve earlier this year and launched agents like 3 months ago. We are now so inundated that our sales force is consumed just trying to follow up on customers saying, please call us. We'd love to talk to you about using your technology in our enterprise. And so that's when this engine works incredibly well. When self-serve is helping feed your enterprise sales force, it allows your sales force to talk to people that are already using and loving the product. Ideally, your sales force shouldn't have to make cold calls. Cold calls are really hard. When was the last time you got a cold call where you actually cared to listen to what the person was trying to sell you on the other end? It's so much better if you've got a user that's like loves your product and says, yes, please, I want to bring this into my enterprise and get it for a lot more customers.
I got this voice AI agent calling me and trying to sell me something. So that's the new generation now. But anyways,
it's just as unappealing to me, right? I can't stand those calls.
Sounds like the new technology should be a voice buyer for you, so that it can talk to the voice AI agents that call to sell.
Yeah, but do you really trust an AI to spend your money? I think most people aren't ready to grant the AI spend authority yet.
Funny enough, there was I don't know if you guys saw this, but there was the AI powered vending machine that was giving out all sorts of discounts and losing the vending machine money. So no, I don't think you should. But on a related note, Scott, I actually do have a question about pricing for you. And look, obviously the pricing mechanism du jour right now is to do it on a tokens basis. But you guys have this interesting opportunity because let's say you're in a bank. There's some work that tokens make sense, but if you're helping them upgrade their old COBOL mainframes, like there's probably a lot more value to that than some of the more basic work. How have you guys thought about like outcomes-based pricing, or how have you guys kind of thought about making sure you capture value for the different tasks that you're helping your enterprises with?
Yeah, and out-based pricing is hard currently, just because ultimately it's the user that determines success. So you'd almost want a work for tips kind of model, but I think those open source has tried that for years, and it's difficult to monetize. I think though the AI is delivering so much value now. We've seen customer acceptance moving dramatically higher. In terms of the price point that people are willing to pay for agents is dramatically higher than they're willing to pay for chat versus what they were willing to pay for code completions before that. So as the value is increased, people's willingness to spend has gone up. And we've adopted much more usage-based pricing. So we currently charge for messages, meaning when you ask the AI to do a task or you ask it questions, you get a certain amount of usage of the large language model per month. And if you exceed that, then you have to replenish usage. And then there are different tiers where we pre-bundle a certain level of usage in. So that's it's ultimately primarily a usage-based pricing model that we're going with. And that often helps us penetrate enterprises. We tell them, like, look, if users aren't taking advantage of Augment, you don't have to pay for it. And if if people are using it more than you expect, you may go through your allocations faster and then have to renew, but at least you're getting material value out of it. And so that's the model that I expect is going to win out. I don't foresee anything like developer-based pricing, depending on productivity. If you make a developer twice as productive, there's just no way you're going to charge, the cost of an additional developer to pull that off, because inference costs are dropping, well too fast for that. Mm-hmm. But I do think, when you're delivering that kind of 2- and 3-fold productivity improvement to engineers, we're seeing, corporations realize how valuable that is to them. Now, it also begs this other question, right? Are people, as a result of software development AIs, are people going to downsize their engineering teams? I do think there's going to be some of that. I would call that the private equity philosophy. Is that if we can do the same amount of engineering with less people, then we're going to scale back our engineering team. I think that's short-sighted. I much prefer the abundance argument that the vast majority of businesses are constrained by missing software. $2.5 trillion lost in the US market last year due to software failures alone. Doesn't count security vulnerabilities and outages and what those have cost. Missing features, what those have cost. Software that doesn't exist. So to me, there's the opportunity to deliver dramatically better software and dramatically more of it. And how much wealth can that create and unleash if every business can have the software of their dreams available to their customers and partners? And so, our hope is that by reducing the cost of delivering great software, we're going to see an increased investment in software engineers as well as in the AIs that work with them. And then we're going to create a material amount of additional economic wealth as a result of that.
I want to augment. Did you see what I did there?
I did.
What you're saying, because I think I do these founder operator dinners, and then I think the consensus has been around hybrid pricing, right? So the SaaS-based, seed-based pricing for those who can bear it, and the consumption-based pricing. But to your point, outcomes, I think nobody could come to a conclusion, because as long as there's a human touching it, it becomes a contentious point. Like, okay, did the agent help me, or did my chap actually do the work?
Yes,
completed it. So I think, to your point, I think the consumption-based model has been well understood, and I think that is going to be the name of the game for a while to come. But I think keeping with go-to-market in the AI era, Scott, what is a AI era CRO? I mean, for you, especially since you are hiring executives. There's an element of PLG in your business. There's an element of understanding customer requirements at the highest levels. And so a CRO is to truly understand the gamut of your selling motions in the AI era, which is moving fast, must be tough. But so curious to see if you have any thoughts on that front.
So I think anyone that's using the kind of plays that we are, they need a very strong self-service growth team that understands all of the the work necessary to build and nurture a community. But then you also want and I'm a huge believer in enterprise sales because these very large customers are not going to just hand over their crown jewels to a collection of different untrusted vendors. They want to build those deeper relationships, and so I think you need expertise in both. You need expertise in enterprise selling and commercial selling, where it's a slightly lower touch, and then self-service, which is in effect zero touch or nearly zero touch for your customers. And the art of building a zero-touch product means it's a lot easier for enterprise to adopt it, even though there's going to be more work to win over 20,000 engineers at one of these really large companies versus a self-service customer that may deploy with 300 engineers without ever talking to a human being. And so you need to have a continuum set up in place and expertise along that continuum to be successful.
We're kind of nearing the end of our time here, Scott. So we do like to talk about decompressing at the end, but I want to ask you something before we finish on company building and the changes in how company building, the philosophy of building companies is changing. And look, obviously, you may have heard the term seed strapping, where founders are raising the seed round and don't need any more cash to get to scale. I'm not sure that works for everybody, but the question here is, what are you actually seeing on the ground in the data in terms of ability to build a company with either fewer people or do it more cost effectively? Any data that you're seeing that is resonating with that?
I have to say I remain skeptical of the $1 billion single founder company that's being put forward. I don't think at least in software, our AIs are capable of achieving that because, we have plenty of engineers that have ceased writing code themselves. What they do is what I call metaprogramming, where they describe the behavior they want and then let the agent go off and craft the code and the tests and so on. But they're very much in the loop and shaping the outcomes that occur. And so, in a world where this collaboration of human and machine intelligence is still critical, I think you need to scale humans and machine intelligence to build businesses, at least the ones that I'm seeing and I can envision. And, I think, too, growth is expensive. When my kids hit their growth spurts, they eat and sleep a lot, right? Because it's hard. It's really hard work to grow. And so having access to capital as a catalyst to enable you to do the things to fund that kind of growth, I think is essential, right? If you look at the space that Augment is operating in, a lot of venture capital is supplying and feeding this tremendous wealth creation and growth that is taking place. And I think if you were to try to take a much more conservative approach, you would have no chance of winning in this market. Now, I can't say that generalizes to every business, but if you happen to be operating without competition from more well-funded companies, maybe you can do well on that approach. But for me, it's like share the risk and reduce the risk to your success by taking the funding that allows you to hit the inflection points and grow really quickly. Because if you don't do it, your competition certainly will.
Scott, I think we literally have a few minutes here, and we always want to ask about how operators, someone like yourself who has seen a couple of tech trends and taken companies to great stages, how do you sort of recharge? How do you sort of decompress, in our words, so that you are sharper? And of course, because you got to motivate the team as well. So how are you doing this?
So something I say to everyone at the company is it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? So you have to work in a way that is sustainable for you. You have to work supremely hard, but you have to work sustainably. I have 2 teenage kids. I took my son, who just graduated on high school, on a backpacking trip for a week. A couple of weeks ago, we got way out and see humans for 4 days, crossed a glacier and waded through some very fast moving water. And so that was a really, great physical exertion and recharge event for me. So I like to get out and about. I think, you definitely need to exercise. You need to sleep well. If you haven't read Why We Sleep, if you're not a good sleeper, it's a very depressing book, but it definitely motivates you to get your sleep hygiene right, because if you don't sleep, you get stupid. And I used to pride myself on sleep deprivation. I no longer do. I think I'm better, if I find ways to, work more efficiently in order to be able to, to get sleep and do and work in that sustainable way. So, find the things that energize you, work hard, and then play hard and sleep. And that's my recipe.
Well, thanks a lot for sharing that nugget, Scott. And we should take it offline in terms of the journey to the glacier hiking. But on that note, thank you so much for taking the time and unpacking a lot of what Augment is building, but also trying to thread between your experience at Pure Storage and what you guys are doing now. So thank you again for joining us on this Unpack podcast.
Arvind, Vignesh, so happy to be here. Really appreciate the time and the questions, and wish you guys all the best.
Thank you so much, Scott. Really appreciate it. All right. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of the Unpack podcast. Big thanks again to Stifel Bank for Geodesic Capital's fund banking needs and my own personal wealth management. They remain a trusted partner. Please remember to subscribe, and we will see you soon. Thank you.